Hello everyone. Thank you for joining this afkARI. As the Arab Reform Initiative, we are launching and we have launched actually a series of discussions with experts from the region, partners, practitioners, to discuss the recent developments, the ongoing wars with a double S that is still happening in Lebanon and the region. Of course, our thoughts are as well with all the displaced communities in Lebanon and our solidarity with the displaced communities. And we hope that soon we will be able to have more in person activities and events. I'm Sarine Karajerjian, I'm the director of the Environmental Politics Program, and we're very happy today to have with us our energy expert, partner, and friend, Diana Kaissi, an energy governance expert in this region who has written and contributed a Q&A discussion online that is available online on the Strait of the Hormuz. We know this is a very timely discussion, specifically as we all know the Hormuz is located between southern Iran, the United Arab Emirates, and northern Oman, and it constitutes one of the most critical choke points in the global energy system. At its narrowest point, it is approximately 34 kilometers wide and serves as the key transit corridor for hydrocarbons, liquefied natural gas, and fertilizers. So, what does it mean really for us in this region, but also what does it mean for the global energy market? I'll jump directly with you, Diana, and you can perhaps give us a more in depth analysis of what made the last February or these events in 2026, the collapse that we have seen qualitatively different from any previous disruptions, as we have seen different tank seizures in 2024? And are we currently witnessing a deterrence breakdown or a new form of control escalation in maritime space? Diana, please,
Thank
the
you
floor is
so Yani, first of all, thank you so much, Sarine, of course, for you and for the Arab Reform Initiative for always opening the space for the relevant discussion to happen at the relevant time and at the right time. Of course, as you have pointed out rightfully in your introduction, these are very unusual times. Yes, it is not the first time that disruptions happen, but they are hitting an artery. And let me just take a few minutes to explain why this is different from the previous times. We have several straits in the world through which oil trade passes. You have the Strait of Hormuz, you have Malaga, you have the Suez Canal. Is not a strait, of course, but it is where most of the oil passes. The Suez Canal, Mediterranean passage, and you have, of course, Bab el Mandeb. These are maybe I just named the top four through which most of the trade, the oil trade, passes to the world, especially to Asia. Now, the major one amongst these is Al Hormuz, Strait of Hormuz. Around 20% of all trade passes through it. Its main destination is Asia. And when this gets hit and comes to an almost standstill, the world will follow. And what I mean by that is some would argue that it's 20% of the whole trade, but it is 20% feeding also almost 90% of the Asian market. So let's put this thing on the table and then ponder and chew on this for a bit. Um, in previous times, there were slight disruptions, and they did not exceed the amount of 2 to 3 to 4 days maximum. We are now closing the first month. Things are continuing to escalate. There are big military hits, and the whole economy is suffering. Maybe we can go into that in a bit of more detail afterwards, but I just want to explain why Hormuz is the choke point that is now disrupting all of the global economy. It's the artery. The artery was hit. We need time to do the bypass, and it's not something that is easily done with that amount of trade happening every day.
okay. Thank you, Diana. And let's also go back to I mean, we've seen Gulf exporters and importers increase reliance on the bypass of the infrastructures and alternative corridors.
Yeah.
Saudi report, experts from Yanbu, as you mentioned also previously, different corridors that do exist, that surge as flows were rerouted through the East-West pipeline, and the UAE leaned on the Fujairah pipeline and export storage complex. What does it exactly mean for the Gulf market?
Oh.
Specifically now, but also how is the Gulf positioning itself vis-a-vis the global geopolitical also role that they're, I mean, we've seen also their security, their energy security has been a threat. Oil plants have been also attacked by the Iranians. But yes, so how can we reposition and re-understand as well what will be the Gulf's position vis-a-vis the region, and how much is this also affecting their market within Asia and their relations within Asia?
Okay, we have to realize that the Gulf market, the GCC countries to start with, have taken a big hit. And very briefly, let me go over them. So, you have, when it comes to the Strait of Hormuz, you have several Arab countries that actually use it to transfer and mobilize all their oil and liquefied natural gas through it. We're talking about Saudi Arabia, we're talking about Qatar, Bahrain, we're talking about the UAE, Iran, and Iraq. Okay, let's put Oman on the side because they actually exist just outside of Strait of Hormuz. Lucky them at the moment. But for the other unlucky countries that I just named, this meant that they, first of all, had to reduce considerably their exports almost to a standstill. And when we are talking about oil production, it's oil production is an LNG also because you have to, of course, produce gas and then liquefy it. Production in general is not an on-off button. You cannot switch the well on and then switch it off. Okay, it doesn't, and then back on again. It takes time to do both, and there are repercussions. When it comes to handling and temporarily closing an oil well, there are repercussions, technical, that needs to be borne. And the same is the case when you are talking about gas and when you are talking about liquefaction of gas. It will take months to get back on track. Meanwhile, what is happening? One, the routes are closed. We are going to alternative ways, and we're going to talk about the pipelines and other means in 1 second. So we have decreased the production. Meanwhile, whatever was in the pipeline being produced had to be stored because there was no way to transfer that or to take them to their destination. So the storage is full. The case of Iraq, they had to, they were obliged to reduce from 3.5, almost 4 million barrels per day. Iraq today, Sarine, is not producing more than 800,000 barrels per oil daily. Okay, this is catastrophic. Why? Many reasons, of course, besides the disruption and the military attacks, and there is the issue of the storage. So this places the Gulf in a very countries in a very precarious place. One, they have decreased their production, their storage is full, so now they are aware of that pain point also. They are rentier states. Iraq's revenues, 96% of the revenues that go into the Iraqi coffers come from oil. In 2022, the revenues alone for the Iraqis was 91 billion US dollars. Okay, and they were still at that time struggling with their budget. So you can imagine their state now. These are states that have completely been reliant on profits and revenues from oil and gas. So this is definitely having a big toll and a catastrophic toll on their economy. Let's talk about alternative, and routes and ways to transfer the much needed oil. Just to put things also in scale, prior to February, the world was producing circa 107 million barrels of oil. We went down to around 93 million. Some might say it's not that big of a deal. Yes, it is because it is concentrated in one place where it's Asia that is not receiving its fare mostly, but also these 20 million plus barrels that are now, almost absent. 7% of these were also going to Europe. So now Europe, which was already struggling, is even struggling more. So this leaves us with the notion of, so we need to secure better routes. Okay, we have existing infrastructure. We do, and you just named them. You have the Saudi Arabia Yanbu, and you have the Fujairah, you have the Iraqi pipeline. But pipelines are very geopolitically sensitive. One, their capacity to transfer the amount of oil that is otherwise has been as otherwise transferred via Hormuz is less. We were talking around, if I want to take the case of Saudi Arabia, 8 to 9 million per day they were able to transfer via Hormuz. They went down to 3.5 million. That's the capacity, and they are hoping to raise it by another 500,000 barrels of oil per day. That's the capacity of their pipeline. Less, even less so, we're talking about 1.5, 1.6 million barrels for the Fujairah. Another complication, besides the fact that capacity wise, the infrastructure, the pipelines are not able to transmit as much, is also where they pass. And Iraq is a dead center straight example of what has been happening. So you know that the federal government and the KRG have been not on speaking terms, to put it mildly, to put it diplomatically. And one of the issues that had been quite contentious and had not been moving forward was using the Kirkuk pipeline up north, the northern pipeline, so they can transfer oil via Turkey and then deport it from there, export it from there. This, because it passed through the KRG, there were a lot of issues regarding the usage of the federal government of this pipeline. The good, happy ending of this small bit is that they were pushed to do a temporary agreement. But this is an example of the politics around using the pipelines currently. Not everybody will be okay with opening the space for such a common use. I think moving forward, the big challenge for the Arab countries is finding a regional يعني a form of cooperation based on reliable infrastructure. How do we move forward collectively? How do we ensure accessibility, which is one of the four A's of energy, security, is ensured by diversifying export routes. We shouldn't all be depending on this artery. We just saw what happened. We should be diversifying the means. Okay, pipelines is one thing. What else is there? So just putting that out there. But again, it's a very eye-opening, complex matter, and I think it has given rise to, all the needed things that we have not been doing, but we need to do moving forward.
Yeah, thank you, Diana. This is very good to look at how we are all interconnected. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
but we have learned from the last, or from this war, and now from the Strait of Hormuz, how interconnected and vulnerable and we are. Uh, I mean, if we look now, how do you see this also this war that is being interpreted, as a shift, as a form of biopolitical, warfare towards access to water, electricity, inside in the region, and basic survival infrastructures are becoming, strategic weapons that are being used in the region. So, to what extent can we interpret this moving forward?
It has, in my very modest opinion, unlocked the level of maliciousness, another level of maliciousness. It has given rise to a whole new game, and it is the game of who controls the sea, not just the air, and who controls the resources. It is par excellence an energy game and an energy war. Let us not kid ourselves about it. Who has the power to control the maximum amount of oil, of resources, and who controls the routes. And the real war, I believe, will end on who gets control of Hormuz, which is again the artery. How do we move forward past this? I don't know whether this will catapult, and I hope it would, energy transition forward. I hope it will. Or it can go the other way around, the way down, and just give rise to more, mining and local production. and each to his own scenario. I hope this doesn't happen. But let's look at energy transition. Okay, where does this leave energy transition? First of all, there is now a big awareness that, well, we really need to be relying on the one thing that will not require routes and transportation, which is renewable energy. But the means to do it and the research that needs to be put into it, we're still from having complete reliance on renewable energy. We know that. Where does this leave the MENA country? So, in order for us to move forward on the renewable energy agenda and, of course, the energy transition, we need to be ahead of the game when it comes to critical minerals. We see Africa has moved forward. We see that whether it's the US, it's China, it is Russia, and all the big players, they're really making head start on who controls critical minerals in Africa and beyond, and Latin America. In the MENA region, we do have also promising critical minerals. We're talking about iron ore, we're talking about aluminum, lithium to some extent. We were talking offline about phosphate. So we have the resources. Now, I want to take it down one notch. Regionally, we do have the resources. Do we have a regional plan to look at the critical minerals and see what we're going to do about it collectively? I hope we will put that and prioritize it to hit so many marks. At the national level, are we prioritizing this? Or is this just checking the boxes still as we are when it comes to Arab countries committing to, transferring an energy transition and, all these COP language that we love? Is this the time to rethink our commitments and seriously start investing with whatever we have in looking at critical minerals and giving rise to doing everything locally? Putting, lifting our sleeves, making the industry work, producing whatever needs to be produced in order to start manufacturing all the needed infrastructure for renewable energy at home. These are, I think, the questions that need to be put at the regional level. When it comes to, and I want at one point to touch on Lebanon, because you and I are living in Lebanon. Lebanon is one of these countries that are like, Jordan, are net importers. We have big ambitions and we had big promises on moving in energy transition and transitioning towards cleaner forms of energy. But the fact remains that we're very much dependent on fuel import and all that we are receiving. One thing that Lebanon has, and I think this would be it would be quite timely for Lebanon to start discussing, is its location. And we do have some existing historic infrastructure that has been there for some time and that can be revived now. So Lebanon can place itself as an alternate route or a passage or a transit area. Many countries have thrived because they were that. Georgia is one example. You know that Georgia does not have any natural resources. The revenues that they get is because they are transit countries and all the pipelines pass through them. We can be such a model, we can be such an outlet, but at the same time, we have to be wary now that we are at an impasse as well. It's not only that we have the challenges of procuring fuel, which is now dwindling, and prices are shooting up, and we definitely don't have the money for it. We also have the challenge of storage. Whatever we are be able to hoard and procure from outside with the minimum amount that we have the challenge of putting it in storage to save it for a rainy day. We barely had 15 days to go by. The same thing, by the way, applies for Jordan. They had 15 days. They're completely almost reliant on Israeli gas, and they faced, and Leviathan the tap has been turned off for security's sake. So they also are facing such a big hurdle. Jordan, as opposed to Lebanon, have renewable energy resources. They have upped their game there. We haven't. So also this will be the time to start relying on renewable energy and, upping our game when it comes to increasing our dependence on renewable energy. We have 300, it's the proverbial 300 days of summer. We have, rain. We can really use that at the time. And I think this is the best time for us to start investing in it.
Thank you, Diana. I think you mentioned very critical points from the phosphates to the
Yeah.
pesticides, fertilizers,
Yeah.
and the food systems and sovereignty and security that we will be also addressing. But I think it's interesting to look at, how can, you mentioned Lebanon, how can Lebanon be, given the fact that we are still an unstable country when it comes to Israel attacking and occupying the land and territories as we are seeing now in the south. But do you think countries, specifically countries like Lebanon, you gave the example of Georgia, but in the MENA region, can realistically achieve greater energy sovereignty? Or
Oh,
are we instead moving towards new forms of managed interdependence? I mean, these are the lessons that we have seen and learned from the Strait of Hormuz crisis.
absolutely. Listen, the energy sovereignty, I think, is a very far-fetched goal at the moment. Let's be realistic. We might be able to achieve it down the line if we continue and persist successfully in finding our own natural resources, exploring that, using it wisely, having the right investor, and then finding the right amount for us to use internally, and then building the infrastructure, of course. But in the meantime, we need to diversify the way we are generating energy, and that's in the medium run. This is our only path forward. We've seen that relying on fuel imports is highly disruptive, let alone the fact that we were almost completely relying on Iraq, and Iraq now is in trouble, and for sure we're not going to see anything from them. They barely have enough of whatever they're producing for their own generation. They were dependent on Iran. That gas at one point stopped. It's quite intermittent. So they have their own package of horrific experience that they are living through. They are in no position to start exporting. This leaves us actually with spot buying, which is the worst thing that you can do, because it is the quality needs to be highly inspected. When you're in a time of rush, the first thing that falls off the grid is the quality. This leaves us with the other alternative of the distributed renewable energy that we are currently, the model that we are having. At one point, I remember we did discuss that with your colleagues. I believe, يعني, I don't want to name specific names, but whether it is Christina Abi Haidar, with full regard, Soham Naimni, and all the rest of the wonderful team, they were talking about distributed forms of renewable energy generation and taking it down to the decentralized level. At this moment, I believe this would be the safest bet for us. Enable a very decentralized form of energy production. Listen, we are not a country that is highly industrialized. We want to produce enough to get us going, to keep transportation going, to keep our services ongoing. So it doesn't take a lot. It doesn't take a central hub for production. We need a modest amount of power generation, and this can really be done, and we have the legal framework for it at the decentralized level. I say empower municipalities to be able to do it, empower the regulatory authorities so they can have the proper oversight. And I think this will help us weather the storm. And that's for the case of Lebanon. On the other hand, if we're looking at the government, and I want to jump from the decentralized work, the government is responsible for the medium to long term vision. We have infrastructure, as I said. We have them from Kirkuk in the 60s, extending via Syria to Lebanon, to Tripoli oil installation. We have the other ones from Saudi Arabia to Zahrani. I'll park Zahrani for the time being for many unfortunate political, where we are now. Let's park it on the side. Let's go for the other one. It's a tripartite agreement between, hopefully, what we can do: Lebanon, Iraq, and Syria. If these three countries, we're on speaking terms, if we can get our heads together and start investing in rehabilitation of this particular pipeline, allowing it to bypass not just Hormuz, to bypass straits in general, and allowing it to be an alternate route, then we do stand a chance. Calculations show that we might be in for a handsome amount of money per year if this gets going, and it's only through the transit fee. So I think this should be pushed forward. I see this as an opportunity amidst all the chaos that we're living. And when you keep your head when everybody else is losing it, this is when you come out winning. Inshallah.
Uh, yeah, I think this is a good way to look at it with the relation Syria, Lebanon, and Iraq. I mean, we have, you mentioned the tripartite agreement. Is it a good time to re-emphasize on this tripartite? What would it require the governments of the three countries to even mobilize, but also what it requires from civil society, think tanks, and different groups in the region to work together more closely and create an alternative model of the
True.
Strait of Hormuz. So I
Yeah.
think that could be a good way entry. But maybe as a last question, given the centrality, since we started with Hormuz and we're ending with 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 Lebanon, but can we realistically imagine a post-Hormuz energy order? And what is the future, forward-looking energy order that we're seeing or witnessing, even a regional
Of course.
reorder that is happening or taking place? And what is this model that we want
Yeah.
to push forward as think tanks, as also intellectuals, as activists, as energy experts from this region?
I think if we do not collectively walk away from this with a robust lessons learned and a goodwill to implement drastic measures, then we have learned nothing, and we are bound to repeat our own mistakes. One, I think we should abandon the idea of relying on choke points. Strait of Hormuz is a choke point. It proved to be, we have always been threatened by it. Any disruption with any country is going to lead to this closure of what you rightfully named and pictured as a very narrow strait. So, one, create and diversify routes, ensure that energy security does include different routing, invest in infrastructure, invest in renewable energy, in critical minerals, invest in a regional cooperation plan, a real one that bypasses the politics and the political deadlock. I think the role of civil society here is to help countries, especially with entities such as yourself, bypass this political deadlock. Civil society has always been known to act as a second track, a parallel track, and to create that air of diplomacy or that diplomatic track that runs parallel to politics. And that this is the moment now when there is a political deadlock of sorts. I think civil society can create the platform where heads and think tanks can come together and propose possible collective way forwards. I think they will be the sound of reason. That's one. Two, in moments of these, when we come out, we need to remodel and rethink how we trade. What are the transparency and governance pillars that need to be in place to oversee trade, taking into consideration that a lot needs to be put in eliminating the model of the rentier state. How much do we trade? How much do we invest in in the infrastructure? How much do we need to invest in the diversification portfolio? How much do we need to create new economies so we will never be cornered into where we are today? We are seeing a number of Gulf countries that were otherwise quite robust today being threatened with a collapsing economy because of this rentier approach. This needs to stop. And I think these would be the major lessons for this region. The whole world also needs to pay attention to this region much more than they were paying attention before, okay? But in a positive manner, I hope. We are the main artery that is providing energy for the globe. If we are disrupted, there's a big ripple effect that is going to happen and is happening across the globe. Energy needs to be treated in a sovereign manner. It should be put aside from any contention whether it is political, whether it is military or any other thing. It cannot be used as a tool or as something that could be fought over. This is quite, Platonic what I just described. But at one point, at least for this region, to say we need to create that track that will bypass all the political deadlock for us to just make sure that we never are cornered in this corner before again.
Thank you so much, Diana. I think you mentioned a lot between decentralized renewable energy, and this is something we're looking into, even exploring much more in Lebanon, in Syria, in Iraq, even when in times of crisis, we're seeing the literature,
Yeah.
the experiences are showing towards a more decentralized. But what does it mean? How can we work more? I mean, there's a lot also local communities
Yes.
mobilizing on the ground to support each other when it comes to electricity and energy solidarity networks. I think you've mentioned also on the phosphates, the minerals, and what is the regional order, and how much also this region is supporting the rest of the world when it comes to energy, and where we have a lot of resources, luxury resources, which is electricity that shouldn't be only luxury, but with the minerals and electricity and energy, liquefied natural gas, and LPG as well. So we are in a region that we should be looking at it in a more collaborative way, understanding the interconnectivity, but also creating more spaces like Lebanon, Syria, Iraq for more tripartite, trilateral agreements, and maybe recreate spaces where critical questions and critical minds are also supporting the energy security movements. Thank you again, Diana. I
Thank you.
really appreciate your time, and
Thank you.
we hope
Great
to see you
questions.
we hope to see you very soon, and we
Inshallah.
also encourage our audience to follow us and listen to the series of afkARI episodes that will come out in the next phase of our work. Please do reach out to us and to Diana, of course, if you have any other questions. And we hope to see you very soon. Stay safe, everyone. Thank you so much.
And thank you so much.
Thank you.